What comes to your mind when you hear the word escort? Most people see it as a problem, right? It's destructive, or they don't like how sex trafficking is involved, and others view it as a solution, especially one to loneliness, stress, or just being a better alternative to dating. But what if I told you the ones who view it as a solution are correct, and escorts are actually the solution? Not a solution in the healthy sense, however, but in the way as a wounded person would reach for painkillers. You see, the problem isn't the escorts. The problem is that the pain he's trying to numb through the use of escorts. The loneliness, the pressure, stress, failed relationships. Over time, you can act out to escape all this pain, but the brain learns. This is how we escape this pain, and this is where we find relief. And in this video, I'm going to break down the psychology behind why men turn to escorts and how it becomes the brain's go-to solution. More importantly, what it actually takes to reverse this. Because if you do not understand how to change your response to these pains, you'll keep trying to fix the wrong problem and stay stuck. And that was me for many years. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did and actually achieve freedom and make progress faster, because you actually are learning a clear process. The thing is, even if you don't want to go and act out with escorts or massage parlors, but you're still getting temptations, it's because there's a part of your brain that believes that acting out is the solution to some of these triggers or some of these problems that you have. Now, a lot of guys, what they try to do is they try to resist urges, or they try to fight urges, but that's not actually solving the problem. The thing is, if you try to do that and try to use effort and willpower, you're not actually going to rewire what your brain deems as a solution to these problems. So the thing is, you might be going clean for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but because you're not actually changing inside out, what you're doing is just delaying another relapse for the future. You're not actually solving the problem, but you're just delaying another relapse. And it's very frustrating, because when you're doing that, your recovery looks like this. You can willpower, you can effort your way through a couple weeks or a couple months, but once you get to a tipping point where a pain is so intense, where you just don't have that willpower anymore, you backslide, you relapse once, you give in more and more and more. Maybe pornography becomes more predominant, there's more shame, there's more guilt, your self-esteem is lowered, and you continue to find other escapes, and you binge out all the way to a point where you reach an all-time low, and that pain is so intense that you can't go and act out anymore. That was the track that I was on for basically 2 years inside of my recovery, if not more, if I were to include pornography and masturbation as well. It's a very frustrating spot to be at, and unfortunately, that's what recovery looks for a lot of guys before they learn what I'm about to share with you. Now, what you have to understand about our psychology is that there's neural pathways always being created, right? So you probably heard of the prefrontal cortex before. This is a part of the brain that creates these neural pathways, but your basal ganglia is another part of your brain that reinforces and automates these neural pathways. So for those who need a reminder on what a neural pathway is, you can think of it as like a trail in your brain. A really good analogy for this is like a snow path. So let's say you're to walk in the woods and there's like shin deep of snow. If you're to try to walk to a cabin, it probably takes some time, right? You got to look at where you want to step, right? It's going to be difficult to lift your foot out of the snow, place another step. You got to always be checking where you want to go. It's going to be difficult at first, but if you're to take that same trail every single day, eventually it's become very easy. At the very least, you're going to be stepping in the same spot where you stepped beforehand, and eventually there's going to be a trail, right? You don't even have to think about where you go anymore. You don't have to think about where you place your feet. It's automatic, it's efficient. And that is exactly what your brain does around habits, right? And your basal ganglia is in charge of reinforcing these habits. So if there's a particular trigger that is like environmental response or something goes on, your basal ganglia will kick in and say, okay, our response to this trigger is to take this neural pathway, and it's very automatic. And what you have done over the years of using pornography, using masturbation, using escorts or massage parlors, which honestly could be decades, is that you've made a trail in your brain. You made a neural pathway that's very strengthened and very automated, that's leading you to go and escape any pains or problems that might be in your life. And the thing is, it's really hard to step off that path, right? Especially if you don't have a process or don't know what you're doing, because it's already been baked into your brain. Now, the thing is, there is hope. This can be reversed and this can be changed, but that is a big process. And the start of that is understanding that this is something that's going to take some time, right? Right now, you're going to be kind of fighting against that old response to that trigger. So what we want to do is create a new response. And before I show you how to do that, I want to make this very clear, because I wish this was taught to me a lot earlier, right? This was the thing that really helped me break free, because no one really talks about the basal ganglia. And I think it's really important to understand, because it's the mechanism in your brain that's keeping you stuck and making you turn to escorts or turn to porn when you feel a certain pain or problem in your life. And it's also the same thing that it can set you free. Now, the thing is, if you don't apply some of these principles, it's going to make recovery a lot harder than it has to be. A lot of the typical advice that you probably heard about trying to change your habits or change your lifestyle or try to resist urges or try to replace it with something else, like all of this stuff does not take into account the neuroscience that I've just laid out for you. The only way to really break free from this and really use this science in your favor is to use something called impulse mapping. Impulse mapping is a great way to accomplish a couple things. And predominantly what it does, basically the most important aspect of it, is it allows you to understand why you're getting temptations, understand the true trigger, the real reason why you want to go and act out, and then rewire your response to that. And over time, what it does, it's like getting that same trigger, and what you used to do is follow this snow path to go and act out, and instead you're following a new path, but you're carving a new one out. And that can be a little difficult, right? Again, you're going to have to think about where you place your feet. There's going to be a lot of awareness. There's going to be a lot of intentionality. But the more you take this new path, the old one snows over. You're not using it anymore, so eventually goes away. And this new path, this new neural pathway that you've created, gets stronger and stronger and stronger and more automatic. So let me take an example from something I see very frequently when working with new clients or just having discussions on consultation calls. A lot of guys, they start to react, but they react a little bit too late. You see, most guys, they try to stop themselves from acting out when they're already in the acting out process. So when they're going through an automated certain steps to go and act out, maybe when they look something up online, maybe when they call up an escort or schedule a call, or when they're driving there or getting cash, they try to stop themselves when they're doing these actions, or they try to stop themselves when they get an urge. But the thing is, that's a little bit too late, because that urge just doesn't come out of nowhere. Again, your basal ganglia has been trained to go and act out and seek escorts or sex workers when you face certain triggers. So if you understand that urges lead back to deeper root causes and deeper triggers, we can just follow that urge back to it just by asking some simple questions. So if you were to ever find yourself in a situation where you do get a temptation or you're facing a big one and you're kind of already in the acting out process, what you want to do is just start to ask some questions. Follow that trail all the way back to the source. So some questions that you can ask is, what pain do I feel right now? What do I feel? Like, what's going on? Why do I want to go and act out? What's the trigger? And it might sound very simple to do this, and it really is. Initially, using this for the first couple times, it might be kind of hard to find the trigger, because you're trying to escape it. You're running from it. So it's like it's going to be hard initially, but eventually it's going to be very easy. And you'll have a little bit better understanding and awareness of what that true trigger is. So once you ask those questions like, okay, what pains am I feeling right now? Maybe you'll find a very clear answer to that. It might be stress, or it might be loneliness or boredom, or feeling isolated, or feeling bad about yourself, your life circumstances, or whatever the case might be. And the thing is, most people usually think that, that's it. I've accomplished it. I realized the true trigger that's here, but that's just scratching the surface. And once you arrive at the pain that you're feeling, you want to go a little bit deeper. So from there, you want to find the specific reason why you're feeling that pain. So let's go over stress. I think this is a very easy example for everyone to understand. Let's say you face the pain of stress. You're like, okay, I feel stressed out right now. It's leading me to want to go and act out because I believe it'll make the stress go away. It's a good way to deal with it. Okay, why do I feel stressed? And there's probably a very, very specific reason why you feel stressed. So maybe there's something in the workplace that's happening where your boss is, trying to yell at you, trying to get something done. You kind of feel disrespected by that. There's some even more pain going on with that. That's a whole new thing you got to talk about. There might be deadlines or other emails you have to send or a bunch of other chaos. And then once you see that, you're like, whoa, okay. I was trying to escape this. I didn't see this going on fully. My body felt it, but I didn't see it. But now I see it. This is the problem. This is the thing that's leading me to want to go and act out. And once you arrive at that, a lot of people, they try to fix it or they try to solve it. And their intentions are good. It's very, very pure. But it sometimes can be kind of misleading. Sometimes the best thing to do is not try to fix it and not try to solve it, but continue to understand. Because again, you're probably scratching the surface of a deeper and deeper and deeper rooted pain that you've never even seen before. And you need to fully understand to actually be able to actually fix this in this first place. And when you arrive at that true trigger, you don't want to fix it or change it just yet. You want to continue to understand and have a conversation around this. You can kind of think about it like this. If you're getting an urge or if you're having a real intense desire to go and act out, there's probably a conversation that's needed to happen that just hasn't. So you need to talk about the pain agent a little bit more. You need to dive into it a little bit more and see it in a deeper and deeper level. And once you fully do that, the desire to go and act out is going to be dramatically decreased because you actually taken a look at the core problem. Instead of facing that same pain and running from it and escaping it and not trying to look at it, you've started to face it a little bit and your body feels at ease. It's like, okay, I was in so much pain. You weren't seeing it beforehand. You weren't addressing it even, but now you're addressing it. I trust you. I'm not going to go and act out anymore because you actually are handling the situation properly. And the beautiful thing is, when you do this, you're doing two things that are awesome for the longevity of your recovery. The first is that you're unwiring the old response to that trigger. So instead of going down that one path, you're not taking that path anymore. And instead, you're carving out a new path. This is the second step. The second beautiful thing that's going on is that you're carving a new path. You're unwiring your old response and you're rewiring a new one. And that right there, if you repeat that, if you're consistent with this, that's the very thing that's going to lead you to not get temptations or not get urges when you're facing these pains or desires in your life, and instead handle it and deal with it in a healthy way that you choose. And eventually that becomes second nature, becomes automatic. So if you do have a similar trigger or similar pain that pops up in your life, boom, you handle it. You don't let it get to a point where you get an urge and then have to backtrack and start to understand, right? You're already on top of things. And that's the skill set that you can learn that allows you to sustain your results. So instead of having these highs and lows that I was talking about earlier, that skill set right there is the very thing that keeps you going like this. You keep going in the right direction because you've actually changed the things that needed to happen in your brain and formed different responses around these things that are leading you to go and act out. This is something that when I learned this, I was blown away. I don't know why more people are not talking about this. I really think the science around the basal ganglia is relatively new. And, not a lot of people are talking about it. It's not mainstream, but this is the very thing that if you can start to do in your life, it's going to lead to life-changing results. But I want to make something very, very clear. And here's the thing. When you're rewiring this new response, it's going to take some time. You got to value consistency over perfection. It's not going to be perfect initially. It's not going to be the way you want it to be. It will not be that way because it's difficult. You're walking out in deep snow. You got to think about where you place your feet. You got to look at the direction that you're headed in. It's going to be a process, but the more you do it, the easier and easier and easier and easier it gets. And the more automatic it becomes, the less you have to think, right? It just becomes your second nature. So it's not going to be perfect, right? It's going to take some time to grasp this skill set. It's going to be a little difficult to do, but the more you do it, the better results you're going to get. And that's something that you can give you a little bit of hope. And I hope this video kind of changes your perspective on recovery a little bit and shows you kind of how to actually navigate this, right? So if you get an urge, follow it back, ask some questions to identify the trigger. And then once you identify that pain or problem in your life, go deeper into it, really explore it, really talk about it, face it instead of trying to escape from it like you once would. And then once you understand it, maybe you can create a solution, maybe you can create a game plan, but just know Just by doing that and facing that trigger, you're carving out a new response and you're unwiring the old unhealthy one. So that is what impulse mapping is. And there are some challenges to this. Like I said, it's not going to be a perfect process initially, but also it's really hard to read the label from inside the bottle, right? So if you're doing this on your own, it's hard to fully recognize the things you're trying to escape, right? You need a third-person perspective. You need someone in your corner to help you navigate this path because, again, it's unnatural for you. You're escaping these pains. You're escaping these problems in your life. It's not going to be something you can just simply do right away. And this is where I can help you guys because I don't want you to go down the same path that I was. I experienced that pain firsthand for many years with a porn and masturbation addiction that was extremely intense. You can probably go see my story on that, which eventually led to me going and acting out and paying for it. And I know the shame and guilt that it's brought me to, all the lows in my life that it's brought me to. And I knew if that were to continue, I don't know where I'd be. And I don't want you guys to be in that same situation any longer. And I just want to give back to viewers of my channel, especially if you made it this far, because it shows you're committed to breaking free. So if you want to learn more about impulse mapping and actually develop a strategy based off of your own circumstance, what I'd like for you to go and do is reserve a consultation call. What we'll do on that call is I'll teach you a little bit more about impulse mapping after I understand your situation, ask you some questions, and just give you a bunch of feedback. And on that call, man, I just want to give you tons of value. At the very least, you're going to be walking away with clarity and some resources that I can give you for free. And maybe coaching seems good. If I feel confident that I can help you and you like kind of what coaching looks like, maybe it's a perfect fit and we get started with that. But again, at the very least, you're going to be getting value from this call. I want to give back. I want to give you progress in a step in the right direction. And the only way to do that is to take the first step and just go down below and reserve that consultation with myself. There's one last thing I want you to take away from this is that you can do it. You can break free. It is entirely possible, right? The only things that might be missing for you right now is just having a clear process and develop a skill set that you can use to break free and just getting the right support. So apply the principles from this video, learn more, get help, whether that be on a consultation call or coaching or with someone else. Be able to dive into this, know that you can do it, because I'm telling you, if I can break free from this, you can do it as well. You just got to put in the work and take the first steps. So with that said, fellas, I hope this was valuable for you. More videos like this will be on my channel very soon here. And yeah, see you into the next one. Peace.